The film opens with chaos as a mysterious virus begins to spread across New York City, turning people into zombies at an alarming rate. The World Health Organization urgently calls for a nationwide lockdown to prevent the virus from reaching other cities. But many citizens dismiss it as a government fabrication designed to profit from the panic. Ignoring the lockdown orders, they allow the virus to spread unchecked. The military and police struggle to contain the outbreak, but the virus proves to be one of the deadliest pandemics in history, quickly threatening to obliterate human civilization. The story shifts to a quiet home, where young Luke is watching his favorite cartoon, completely unaware of the world unraveling outside. Suddenly, the TV channels cut to national news, broadcasting urgent reports about the rapid spread of the zombie virus. Just as panic begins to settle in, Luke's older sister, Abigail, is called by their mother. They briefly video call their father, who urgently tells them he can't make it home and that they must follow their mother to safety outside the city. Then the sound of a helicopter slicing through the air and distant shouting pierces the tension. Their mother ushers them into the car, but before they can escape, a zombie appears, attacking both their mother and Luke. Abigail, frozen with terror, hides beneath the car, watching as the nightmare unfolds. The attack is swift and brutal. Abigail watches in horror as their mother, now infected, begins to transform into a zombie, lurching toward her with a hunger in her eyes. Just as she's about to be attacked, a police officer named Cassius bursts onto the scene, his gun raised. He shoots their mother, saving Abigail in the nick of time. With no time to lose, Cassius promises to take her to safety, away from the chaos and away from the virus that's sweeping the world. 10 years later, the world is a shadow of its former self. The zombie virus has decimated over 90% of humanity, and cities that were once vibrant are now abandoned ghost towns, overrun by the undead. Some survivors, like Abigail and Cassius, have retreated into the wilderness, far from the remnants of civilization. Every day, they move by horseback, searching for places untouched by the chaos. The silence of the world is deafening, but they press on. To survive in this new world, Cassius teaches Abigail how to hunt wild animals. Food is scarce, and hunting is their only option. Over the years, their bond has deepened. Cassius has come to see Abigail as the daughter he never had, and he trains her in hand-to-hand combat, weapons, and survival skills. He knows the dangers they face, and he's determined to make sure she can protect herself if the worst comes for them. During their journey, Cassius gathers seeds from plants like corn, rice, and various fruits, driven by the hope of one day building his own garden. His dream is to create a sustainable future when they finally reach Garden City, the last known sanctuary where survivors of the zombie outbreak have gathered, a place where they could start over. One day, as they ride through the desolate wilderness, they witness a brutal scene, zombies attacking a group of people. Abigail, her sniper rifle at the ready, immediately decides to help. But as a beginner, her aim falters. She pulls the trigger, and to her horror, she accidentally shoots and kills one of the men in the group. After taking down the zombies, Abigail and Cassius approach the man's belongings, scavenging what they can. They prepare to leave, but as they turn to go, they're confronted by several armed individuals, friends of the man they had unintentionally killed. Guns are raised and accusations fly, with the group believing that Abigail and Cassius were responsible for the attack. With tensions escalating and no time for explanation, Abigail and Cassius are forced to fight back. As the tension reached its peak and a shootout seemed imminent, a pregnant woman named Megan stepped forward, her voice calm yet commanding. She intervened, stopping everyone in their tracks. With a soft but firm tone, she invited Abigail and Cassius to join their group, desperate for more hands after the recent losses they had suffered. Before anyone could respond, the distant growl of hundreds of zombies filled the air. The noise had drawn them in, and the horde began to close in fast. The sudden wave of undead forced Cassius, Abigail, and the others to put aside their differences and fight side by side if they had any hope of surviving. But despite their efforts, the sheer numbers of zombies overwhelmed them. Among the horde, there was one creature far stronger and faster than the others. It tore through their ranks, killing almost everyone in its path. Only Cassius, Abigail, Megan, and Megan's husband, David, managed to escape the carnage, fleeing in a car as the others were left behind. As they sped away, Cassius glanced at Megan, his mind racing, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He couldn't help but wonder what had brought her group out into the chaos. Megan, catching her breath, explained that they were headed to a place called Bot Town, a safe, zombie-free city built on a river. They hoped to find a doctor there who could help with her pregnancy. She added that the city was supposed to be nearby, but their car had broken down just before they could reach it. After inspecting the vehicle, Cassius quickly realized the engine had been severely damaged by gunfire. The situation left them with no choice but to abandon the car and continue on foot. As they walked through the city, now eerily silent, a ghost town devoid of life, they remained on edge, constantly scanning their surroundings. Every shadow seemed threatening, every creak of abandoned buildings a potential sign of danger. The tension was palpable, knowing that zombies could be lurking around any corner. After some time, Cassius breathed a little easier. The area seemed clear, at least for now. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, they decided to rest in one of the nearby buildings. The dark would make it harder to spot zombies, and moving at night would only increase the risk. Before settling in, Cassius took extra precautions. He set up a series of traps around the building, simple but effective, meant to alert them if zombies or raiders tried to breach their temporary sanctuary. Meanwhile, a darker threat loomed. Several members of Megan's group, who had been bitten during the chaos, were beginning to show signs of the infection. Their transformation into zombies was inevitable. Adding to the growing sense of danger, a group of zombies, led by the monstrous, strongest zombie, had found the abandoned car. The sight of their presence confirmed what Cassius feared. They were no longer just dealing with the undead. They were being hunted. Inside the building, as the group settled in, Megan shared a revelation that caught everyone off guard. She and David were originally from Garden City, the very place Cassius and Abigail had been desperately searching for. But the city had fallen, overrun by zombies, forcing them to flee. They had sought refuge in Bot Town, a place they knew well from regular contact with its residents. Megan explained that Bot Town was built on a series of interconnected boats on a river, making it one of the safest havens for survivors. Zombies, unable to swim, couldn't reach them, giving the survivors a chance at a life free from the constant threat of attack. The idea of Bot Town intrigued Abigail. For the last 10 years, she had survived alone with Cassius, who had become the father figure she never had. The thought of living among other people, in a place designed to be safe, stirred something inside her. But Cassius was reluctant. He didn't trust that Bot Town would be as safe as it seemed, and he worried that it might not withstand a large-scale zombie attack. The disagreement between him and Abigail simmered, and the tension was palpable. In the end, Cassius relented. He couldn't bear the thought of leaving Megan, who was pregnant, in such a perilous situation. The next day, as Abigail wandered through the building, she heard something stirring below. She was about to tell Cassius when, out of nowhere, a zombie emerged, charging straight at her. The sudden rush of fear was overwhelming, but Abigail's training kicked in. She sprinted, dodging its grasp, and in a desperate move pushed the zombie off the top floor. Once the immediate danger passed, Cassius wasted no time. With the tension still thick in the air, he urged Abigail and the others to keep moving before more zombies were drawn to the noise. The traps he had set earlier seemed to have worked, holding the undead at bay for now. But they couldn't afford to linger. As they made their way further into the wilderness, Abigail broke the silence. She mentioned an airstrip nearby, used for small aircraft. Her voice was tinged with nostalgia as she explained how her father, a pilot, used to take her flying there. If they could find a plane, their journey would be far quicker, and they wouldn't have to worry about the constant threat of zombies. The group nodded in agreement, the promise of a faster escape making the decision easy. They'd stop at the airstrip. However, as they neared their destination, the mood shifted. They came across two bodies, both shot dead. It was clear they had been attacked by humans, not zombies. The unsettling discovery sent a ripple of unease through the group. It wasn't the undead they had to worry about, but the living people who had become just as dangerous. At the same time, a family was seen hidden behind a building, watching them. Later, Cassius opened the car's trunk, and his eyes immediately caught something that could make all the difference: a wheelchair. It was just what Megan needed to move more quickly, and with the added speed, they could cover more ground without worrying about her ability to walk long distances. They pressed on, eventually reaching the airstrip. Abigail, eager to make the most of their chance, rushed to one of the hangars. After a moment of tense searching, her eyes lit up. Inside was an undamaged plane, a lifeline to escape their ever-tightening world. But there was no time to waste celebrating. The plane had been sitting unused for over 10 years, and its condition was uncertain. It could have mechanical issues that could jeopardize their escape. David got to work immediately, tinkering with the plane's engine, while Cassius led Abigail in a search for fuel. The airstrip was deserted, but they had to hope it held what they needed to get the plane off the ground. Meanwhile, a darker threat was closing in. The family who had been hiding behind the building they'd passed earlier had fallen victim to a deadly zombie attack. The strongest zombie, leading the horde, ripped through them with terrifying force. The sound of the attack reached Cassius and Abigail, an unmistakable sign that the undead were getting closer. Time was running out. As Abigail and Cassius kept watch, the distant rumble of movement grew louder, and they soon saw a large group of zombies closing in on the airstrip. With no time to waste, Cassius signaled for everyone to board the plane. David rushed to the cockpit, trying to start the engine as Cassius opened fire, keeping the zombies at bay with each shot. The plane finally roared to life, and they wasted no time, taking off just as the horde closed in behind them. But the danger wasn't over. One zombie managed to leap onto the plane, its grotesque hands reaching for Cassius. With a quick and desperate struggle, he fought it off just in time, narrowly avoiding a bite. Once they were airborne, the relief was short-lived. Within minutes, the plane's engine began to malfunction. Despite their best efforts, it became clear that they couldn't control the descent. They crash-landed into a tree with a brutal jolt. Miraculously, they all survived the crash with only minor injuries. Their escape had come at a high cost, but they were still alive. With no other option, they gathered their belongings and set out on foot, continuing their journey through the wilderness. After hours of walking, they stumbled upon an abandoned train station. It offered a brief respite from the relentless journey ahead. They decided to rest, knowing that 2 more days of walking awaited them before they could reach the river. Later, David instructed his wife to rest in one of the train cars while he slipped away, silently plotting to leave. He hadn't told her the truth. David had been bitten by a zombie on his leg, and the infection was spreading fast. Fearing that he might turn, he couldn't bear the thought of attacking his wife, so he planned to leave before it was too late. Meanwhile, Cassius was alerted by strange sounds coming from outside the train. When he went to investigate, he found Megan, quietly searching for food, her stomach growling with hunger. In the end, he helped her open a can of food, the two of them sharing a brief moment of calm amid the chaos. As they sat together, Cassius shared a painful memory with Megan. His own wife had been pregnant, just like her. But when the zombie outbreak hit their city, Cassius couldn't save her. Cassius went on, telling Megan how he had found Abigail on the brink of being killed by her own mother, who had turned into a zombie. With no family left, Cassius had taken Abigail in, and over time he came to see her as the daughter he'd lost. Despite their shared grief, Megan's voice was soft but firm. She urged Cassius to give Abigail more freedom, especially as she was entering her teenage years. Megan explained that if Cassius kept being too strict with her, Abigail might rebel and stop listening altogether. The next day, Cassius and the others continued their arduous journey, crossing endless grasslands and venturing deep into forests far from any remnants of civilization. But as the day wore on, Cassius began to notice something unsettling about David. His behavior had shifted, his movements were tense, his eyes often darting nervously, as if he were hiding something. Cassius, ever observant, waited for a quiet moment to pull David aside. When he finally asked what was going on, David hesitated, guilt written across his face. It was then that David admitted the truth. He had been bitten by a zombie. The infection was already spreading, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before he turned. With a heavy heart, Cassius told David to say his goodbyes to Megan, knowing the tragic fate that awaited him. Once the transformation began, he would become a threat to them all. As night began to fall, the group came across a well-maintained house, a sign that someone might be living nearby. Cautiously they approached, only to be confronted by a man who suddenly emerged from the shadows, weapon raised. His eyes scanned them warily, and in a commanding voice, he told them to put their weapons in a box. With no other option, Cassius reluctantly complied, explaining their desperate need for food after running out of supplies. But as they placed their weapons down, the tension lifted. The man, to their surprise, was kind-hearted. His name was Northian, and after hearing their story, he welcomed them into his home. Not only did he offer them a safe place to rest, but he also provided them with a generous supply of food, free of charge. As a gesture of goodwill, Northian allowed them to use all the facilities in his house, including the electricity. Relief washed over Cassius and the others as they settled into Northian's home, feeling a rare moment of peace in a world that had offered little. They believed him to be a genuinely good person, offering shelter and safety when they needed it most. While they stayed there, Cassius discovered Northian's old laptop, still functional despite the chaos. As he scrolled through the files, old photos of himself with his late wife surfaced, bringing waves of nostalgia and grief. Meanwhile, Abigail, lost in thought, tried to remember fragments of her own family, lost to the horrors of the outbreak. As the evening wore on, the group gathered in the living room trying to relax. But the atmosphere shifted unexpectedly. Northian, once calm and composed, began speaking in an erratic, disjointed manner. His words, once friendly, now echoed with strange excitement as he bizarrely expressed joy about the outbreak of the zombie virus. The unease grew when David, feeling off, feared the worst. He sensed the same ominous feeling he had when he had been bitten. His heart raced, and for a moment, it seemed he might turn into a zombie. But through sheer will, David managed to control the transformation, his fear momentarily quelled. However, the calm was shattered when Northian revealed his true intentions. He pulled out a peculiar device, one that sent a pulse of energy through the room, knocking them all unconscious. When they awoke, the truth became clear. Northian was no kind-hearted man, but a deranged scientist, obsessed with experimenting on both the living and the dead. His kindness had been a trap, a facade designed to lure them in. Northian had planned to unleash one of his pet zombies, hoping to send it after the group to bite and infect them. But things didn't go according to plan. David, now partially infected, had gained a strength far beyond that of a normal human. When the zombie was released, David resisted the control of Northian's device with surprising force, breaking free and overpowering the undead creature. With David's strength, the others were freed, and they immediately retrieved their weapons from the box. There was no time to waste. They rushed out of the house, determined to escape before Northian could send more zombies after them. In a desperate move, they stole Northian's car, tearing away from the house and speeding into the night, narrowly avoiding the mad scientist's wrath. But their moment of relief was short-lived. Megan, who had been quiet for much of the journey, suddenly doubled over in pain. It became clear she was about to give birth. Tension gripped the group as they tried to make sense of the situation. But things only worsened. As they continued down the road, they were surrounded. The strongest zombie and his horde, still relentless from their previous chase, had caught up with them. Their path was quickly blocked by dense trees, leaving them no choice but to flee on foot. Panic set in as they ran, the zombies closing in. David, realizing that Megan could no longer keep up, made a gut-wrenching decision. He stayed behind, determined to hold off the zombies for as long as he could. He fought with everything he had, taking down several of the undead with brutal force. But the odds were against him. The strongest zombie, far more vicious and powerful than the others, lunged at him with terrifying speed. Despite his valiant efforts, David was no match for the beast, and the relentless zombie tore through him, leaving him to fall in a final, desperate battle. As the zombies closed in, threatening to overwhelm Abigail and the others, a sudden roar of gunfire shattered the night. Guards from Bottown, who had been patrolling the area, appeared out of nowhere, firing at the undead horde. Cassius and the group, barely escaping with their lives, were quickly ushered to safety. They were taken to Bottown, where Megan was immediately attended to by a doctor named Jossie, who would help with her childbirth. Meanwhile, Cassius and Abigail were examined to ensure they hadn't been infected by the zombie virus, the tension palpable as every second seemed to stretch on. The next day, Northian, still consumed by his rage, wandered through the woods. There, among the trees, he stumbled upon the lifeless body of David. The sight confirmed that Cassius and the others weren't far behind. The realization hit him like a storm. He had to exact his revenge. They had destroyed everything he had worked for, and now he would stop at nothing to hunt them down. Meanwhile, back at Bottown, Cassius and Abigail met George, the leader of the settlement. George welcomed them with open arms, his warm smile a stark contrast to the chaos outside. He hadn't seen another survivor of the zombie outbreak in ages, and his relief was palpable. The virus had ravaged the world, leaving humanity on the brink of extinction, and Bottown was one of the few remaining refuges. Though Cassius and Abigail were given shelter in Bottown, Cassius knew their stay wouldn't be permanent. He couldn't shake the feeling that places like this, isolated and relatively safe for now, were dangerous in the long run. If the zombie virus ever reached their sanctuary, the consequences would be catastrophic. He turned to Abigail, urging her to leave soon, but she refused. For the first time in years, she was surrounded by others her age, and she didn't want to leave the only semblance of normalcy she had ever known. A short while later, Dr. Jossie approached Cassius with news. Megan's baby had been born healthy, but the exhaustion from childbirth had taken its toll on Megan. Her body was too weak to survive, and the grim reality hit Cassius hard. Cassius went to Megan's side where she lay weak, but still holding on to the last threads of life. Knowing her time was running out, Megan made a final request. She asked Cassius to take care of her daughter, just as he had cared for Abigail. She wanted her child to grow up strong, to survive in a world that had become unforgiving. Before Megan passed, she gave Cassius a necklace, one that held a photo of herself and David. Despite his tough exterior, Cassius couldn't bring himself to leave the baby behind. The weight of abandoning the newborn in a world that had already taken so much was unbearable. Fortunately, Dr. Jossie, a mother who had also lost her family to the zombie virus, agreed to help care for the child. She saw the pain in Cassius's eyes and, in that moment, understood the need to protect the innocent. Meanwhile, Norton had finally tracked down Bottown, but his arrival wasn't welcomed by the silence he expected. Instead, he was met by a horde of zombies, their grotesque forms closing in on him from all directions. But rather than fleeing, Norton's eyes lit up with manic excitement. This was exactly what he had been waiting for. The zombies, his once controlled subjects, were now his army, and with them, he saw the chance for the ultimate revenge. Back in Bottown, Abigail was adjusting to life in the safety of the settlement. She soon met Roderick, a charismatic teenager who invited her to a party, a rare opportunity to socialize with others her age. The night seemed full of promise, a break from the weight of survival. But when Roderick suddenly disappeared without a trace, Abigail's curiosity turned to concern. Determined to find answers, she set out to search for him. In her search for answers, Abigail stumbled into the engine room of one of Bottown's ships. The dimly lit space was filled with the hum of machinery, but something caught her eye, a remote sitting on a control panel. Curiosity piqued, she reached for it, her finger hovering over the button. But just as she was about to press it, Roderick appeared out of nowhere, grabbing her wrist to stop her. His voice was urgent as he explained the device's purpose. Pressing the button would trigger a series of bombs planted on every ship in Bottown. The bombs were a last-ditch safeguard, designed to detonate in case the zombies ever breached the city's walls. In addition to the bombs, an emergency evacuation route had been set up, a hidden underground passage that would lead them across the river to safety. The next day, as life in Bottown carried on as usual, the peace was shattered. Norton's zombie army, controlled by his twisted devices, breached the city's defenses, launching a surprise attack on the unsuspecting citizens. Panic erupted as the zombies flooded the streets, tearing through the unprepared town. Casualties piled up quickly, and the chaos spread like wildfire. The young people, however, seemed to hold their own, fighting back with a determination born of survival. But there were too many zombies, and Norton's army was overwhelming. Realizing the imminent danger, George, the leader of Bottown, took quick action. He ordered the teenagers to evacuate the survivors through the underground passage before the zombies could overrun the city completely. Time was running out, and the fate of everyone in Bottown now rested on their ability to escape before the horde could infect them all. Cassius, having entrusted Megan's baby to Jossie for safekeeping, immediately joined Abigail in the fight against the oncoming zombies. His focus was sharp, but when he saw Abigail under attack by Norton, a sudden wave of panic distracted him. In that moment, a zombie pushed him into a deep pit, sending him crashing to the bottom. From above, Norton coldly watched, his voice commanding the zombies to stay back. He wasn't going to let them finish Cassius off, he had other plans. Norton, relishing the moment, descended to deliver the final blow himself. But Cassius wasn't finished. With what little strength he had left, he fought back fiercely, managing to strike at Northen's zombie control device. Sparks flew as the device malfunctioned, and in that critical instant, Northen's own army of zombies turned on him. The man who had controlled the undead was devoured by the very creatures he had once commanded. Meanwhile, Abigail and Cassius, barely escaping the chaos, found themselves cornered by the strongest zombie. The monster's movements were swift, and it seemed intent on finishing them off. But as Abigail looked into its eyes, a horrifying realization struck her. The strongest zombie wasn't just any undead, it was her father. The creature chasing them, relentless in its pursuit, was trying to reunite with his daughter. Despite the devastating truth about her father, Abigail and Cassius couldn't afford to linger. They had no choice but to flee the ship, knowing that Roderick would soon activate the bombs. As the survivors were quickly evacuated, the tension was unbearable. Roderick, with a cold determination, detonated the bombs, obliterating the entire bot town in an instant. Abigail and Cassius barely managed to escape the explosion, their hearts pounding as they sprinted away from the city's fiery demise. But as they caught their breath, they realized they weren't alone. The strongest zombie, the creature that had once been Abigail's father, had followed them. Rage and fear surged within her as the undead monster closed in, and Cassius stood his ground, fighting to protect the group from further harm. Just as the zombie's strength began to overwhelm him, Abigail made a gut-wrenching decision. She raised her weapon and, despite the deep, aching pain in her chest, she shot the creature. She couldn't risk losing Cassius, the man who had become her father figure, the one who had saved and cared for her when everything else was lost. With the last of the zombies defeated, the survivors were left with no place to return to. The world they knew was gone, destroyed by the virus and its horrors. But Cassius, ever the protector, made a bold decision. He would lead them to an island, a new place where they could rebuild. With seeds in hand, symbols of hope and a future, they set sail toward this new beginning. The film ended with them embarking on this uncertain but hopeful journey into the unknown, ready to start anew.
Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.